Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here. Regarding Modern 40k lore, people like Commissar Gamza and Mac of the Outer Circle have talked about how Warhammer 40k has lost its Grimdark. However, my aim here isn't to debunk these notions. I'm here to talk about something else. Something that is much more important. And before I begin this video, I want to say that I love Warhammer 40k. And I will always love it, and I will never stop loving it. Warhammer 40k is one of my favorite settings of all time, and it will be that way for all time. So, let me continue my rather long intro for you to understand why I am so passionate about this video. And this might be, so far, in my very short proper career on YouTube, the most important video I ever made. My initiation to 40k lore started in September 2017, well, properly at least. And Tzeentch initially got my interest. I was researching the Chaos Gods, and at the time, I also started reading a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's works. So Tzeentch really intrigued me. I really like Tzeentch. He is my favorite Chaos God if we do not include Malus or Malal, whichever you prefer. I love Tzeentch's Lovecraftian horror aspect. All of the gods in 40k have it, but Tzeentch in particular used the Lovecraftian horror aspect more than the others. Now, for me, what really properly got me into 40k was my discovery of the Necrons. And that's because I love any faction with high tech. Like, for example, I love the Protoss in StarCraft. So I'm just a sucker for high tech factions. So that's how I properly got into 40k lore. And then I discovered the other armies I liked, like the Tau, the Night Lords, Iron Warriors, Imperial Fist, stuff like that, etc. Now, I started playing 40k Tabletop in late 8th edition around 2019, and at the time I didn't know that the older rules were much better and much more deeper, so my initial experiences were actually rather cool. It was pretty nice. As salty as me and my friends have gotten. And I really like 9th edition release. Well, I still do. I think from the new releases, 9th is the best of the bunch of 8th, 9th. Between 8th, 9th, and 10, 9th is clearly the best of them. And with this, I got other friends into it. And over the next 1.5 years, I ran a crusade with said friends, and it involved the Thousand Sons, Necrons, and Sisters of Battle. And it was completely glorious. If you're wondering the result, the Thousand Sons won. With that very long intro out of the way, to show how passionate I am, Warhammer 40k hasn't necessarily shed its grimdark nature. Instead, it lost something, one of the many things that made it special, its soul. It's not evident in the artwork or Games Workshop's treatment of 40k compared to like their other games, or their attitude towards their customers. You can see it from like the evolving modern lore and the player base. The main essence of 40k lies in many things. Its grimdark nature is one of them. However, it's not all of it. 40k's main spirit has undergone a bad transformation. The modern lore sucks, really. Which leads me to my next point. Firstly, I want to talk about the lore. The lore is still grimdark, but not in the right way. Ever since Cadia fell, Grimdark events still happen, but it's the same old derived trite, really. Either a Demon Primarch, the Grey Knights, or the Avatar of Cain is used to show how powerful their new miniature is. It has gone stale and derivative, as if it was even good in the first place. Modern 40k's writing is absolutely awful, and I'm not only talking about Primaris. As of now, Warhammer 40k's writing tries to move forward, yet it's also stagnant at the same time. It's like a quantum superposition, only except when you look at it, it is still trying to be both stagnant and be progressing at the same time. As of recording, Psychic Awakening happened 4 years ago, and nothing became of it. The Silent King came back, and nothing became of it. The Squats came back as Leagues of Votann, and nothing became of it. Arcs of Omen happened, Angron and Lionel Johnson came back, and nothing became of it. Do you see the problem here? Things happen, but nothing becomes of them. And the lore of the new units is only used to advertise GW's new miniatures. Granted, it has always been this way. My problem stems from the fact that when you resort to the same old tropes that you created that weren't all that good to begin with, it grows stale and only harms the setting. They are not advertising their miniatures the right way. Instead of the aforementioned Demon Primarchs, Grey Knights, or Avatar of Cain being used as punching bags, add some real stakes. Add some Pyrrhic victories that actually mean anything. There was a good reason why Warhammer 40k's main protagonist was the Imperium. Not only because they were human, but also because 40k was about the fall of the Imperium. Ever since Rabute Gilman came back, if anything, the Imperium is rising again. Although incompetent, Chaos was used to be a Lovecraftian force of nature whose true nature and motives were inconceivable by mortals, that knowing even a fracture of it would cost one's sanity, that you would either die against it, or you would live long enough to see yourself serving it, unless one or all of the three conditions were met. 1. You didn't have free will. 2. You didn't have a soul. 3. You were directly protected by another godlike entity. No, Sister of Battle's faith does not count as being protected by the Emperor. What would have been counted would be a Battle Sister directly speaking to the Emperor and gaining his protection. Direct protection would be like the Grey Knights who use the Emperor's own gene seed, which makes them incorruptible. Now, people can just casually resist chaos through quote-unquote faith, which is nothing but a crutch for the authors to do Deus Ex Machina. The Imperium is rising. If Cadia didn't fall, the Imperium would have actually won. And I think I know why they are doing this. They are doing this to turn Warhammer 40k into Age of Sigmar in space. It's a boiling frog effect, where they are introducing these changes slowly into the setting with modern lore, which essentially puts modern 40k into the position of Star Wars Legends. Star Wars Legends, as great as it was, suffered from contradicting information that harmed the setting, like the Infinite Empire only having around 500 planets, to them fighting a galaxy-wide war against the Eshka and winning, or just equine Yuuzhan Wong with technology, but that's neither here nor there. We have old lore where chaos is this inevitable Lovecraftian force, and the new lore where it is much easier to resist chaos because that's how it is in Age of Sigmar. The writing has also turned more into Age of Sigmar, like with the return of the Primarchs and apparently, in Arcs of Omen, Khorne briefly manifesting in real space, swinging his blade and corrupting fleets of Primaris Marines and Sisters of Battle. Age of Sigmar is a setting where literal gods clash upon the battlefield. I believe that Wrath of Magnus in late 7th edition and The Gathering Storm were originally meant to be the catalyst of 40k's own end times, but when they used fantasy as the sacrificial lamb and the backlash they got was universally negative, the executives went, oh fuck, this did not go to plan, what are we going to do now? So instead of killing 40k outright, they decided to slowly transform it, like a boiling of frog so slowly, it doesn't realize that it's being boiled alive until it is too late. This is because it's like George R. R. Martin and A Song of Ice and Fire. They are absolutely sick and tired of 40k, and they would much rather do something new. Just like how Grimm, instead of working on that 6th book, which will never come out by the way, he's going to commit Miura, i.e. die before he can finish his story, worked on Elden Ring, and GW would much rather have an Age of Sigmar in space. This is evident in the lore and rules. They treat Warhammer 40k with complete and utter contempt. Just compare Age of Sigmar rules to Warhammer 40k rules. Age of Sigmar's narrative play comes first, whereas in 40k match play comes first, and almost nobody plays Crusade. I'm the exception, not the rule. And there is no reason to play Crusade when Path to Glory rules exist. GW knows they are on borrowed time. The reason why they make all these big named character miniatures with tactical rocks they stand on is to over-design it as much as possible so the mold will be expensive and to make it difficult for 3D printers to replicate it. But they still go on due to a combination of arrogance and pig-headedness. They know they are the top dogs of the tabletop wargaming industry. Well, until 3D printing becomes much more accessible, common and cheap, to the point they will be made obsolete. But honestly, if the result would have been the same as the Age of Sigmar of today, it would have been better for 40k to burn in its own end times than see it become the monstrosity it became today. One more thing, because I don't think I will ever be able to talk about it. Warhammer the Old World will fail. Firstly, it is a setting that GW has expressed clearly that they want nothing to do with it anymore, and only see it as a way to gain short-term profit from people who only played fantasy, and look at fantasy with rose-tinted glasses rules-wise, because they know for a fact that a big portion of the Warhammer fantasy fanbase comprises of Total War Warhammer players, who do not give a shit about collecting and painting miniatures, let alone playing the tabletop. They only care about the lore and the next Total War Warhammer game and DLC's Creative Assembly shits out. So good fucking luck bringing new blood into Old World, as it's also just simply too expensive. Old World is going to enter into the same paradigm that 40k has, where it will actively hemorrhage new players, and it will only be played by stuck-ups, whereas Horse Heresy and Age of Sigmar are still thriving community-wise. Now we come to the section where I talk about the rules and how the community's treatment of the rules. If Warhammer 40k 8th and 9th editions were war games trying to be video games, 10th edition is a monstrosity that tries to be a video game and a trading card game. What do I mean by this? I mean that the rules are watered down. Now, I am not one of those 40k veterans that look at the earlier editions with rose-tinted glasses, because back then there were some stupid rules, like instant death and that damn to wound chart. I hate that chart. I refuse to use it even in my own homebrew edition. Even if some rules were bad, they at least had a soul. The armies actually felt different in 10th. In 10th, it's just be luckier and roll more 6s to win. At least with older editions, if you had map superiority, you could at least gain a Pyrrhic victory. With 10th, you don't get that, because it's all about that OC stat, which is also why all armies feel and play more or less the same. All armies are horde armies, making at least completely unviable, if not unplayable. I know that Necrons were always an elite horde, but seeing my main army turn into just a horde where you spam warriors absolutely disgusts me. And if you want the detailed rundown of the older rules, watch this video by Deadlifts for the Dark Gods. which is a very well made video. Also, nobody plays Crusade. Nobody. People like me are the very rare exception and not rule. Everyone plays match. It's all about complete balance now. I don't mind a balanced game because if the game itself is not balanced, the narrative play is not worth it in the first place. What I do have a problem is that if you balance and streamline everything, you only get a lame, gray, mediocre mess that is for nobody aside from normies. 40k's main player base now comprised of people who came from trading card games like Magic the Gathering and make lists without thinking about the significance and the lore of their models. Granted, the fluff is only there to advertise first, but it's there for a good reason and it creates one of the most unique ways of storytelling and world building that you wouldn't see in, say, books or movies, or even video games. Whereas the new 40k player, who started with Leviathan, now either doesn't even know lore exists or outright doesn't care. They just want to roll dice and win. If that's you, more power to you, just don't ruin it for everyone else. Not everyone wants to win. Not everyone is uncaring of the lore as you are. The uncaring nature of these types of players are also what hurts narrative play, and why people who want to properly play Crusade cannot, and they simply move on to Horus Heresy or Age of Sigmar, where it's the complete opposite. In 40k, narrative players are gatekept by both GW, due to them encouraging match play in 40k, and the player base who only wants to play matched. In Horus Heresy and Age of Sigmar, where it's the total opposite, where if someone tries playing it like it's match play, someone puts their foot down and tells them, "We don't do that here. You can do it, but you'll have to find someone that wants to do it with you." Essentially, in Horus Heresy and Age of Sigmar, the competitive players are gatekept. You can even see this from the rulebooks. Horus Heresy and Age of Sigmar are games meant to be played narratively first, whereas 40k is at this point played competitively first, which is the third reason why Warhammer 40k has lost its soul. Because the narrative doesn't matter anymore. Not only that, the narrative just sucks now. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Warhammer 40k has lost both its soul setting-wise and game-wise. Just look at all these videos. All of my friends are at this point completely uninterested in modern 40k lore, only sticking to classics. I don't see this ending well for 40k both as a narrative and as a game. To think that Warhammer 40k 10th edition is just watered down Age of Sigmar. If I wanted to play watered down Age of Sigmar, then I'd go play Age of Sigmar. And no, I'm not interested in the old world. It is a corpse resurrected by Games Workshop that claims that it's fantasy, which clearly GW doesn't care about. And people accuse Age of Sigmar of wearing fantasy's skin. So, at that point, I'd much rather play Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings instead. Which is a good game, by the way. So I'll cover old 40k, alternate heresies, and stuff like that. I still love Warhammer 40k. I always will love Warhammer 40k. I don't like the modern lore. And I'm sorry. I just don't like the modern lore, and I'll be moving on to Horus Heresy, Age of Sigmar, and Conquest. I'm sorry. But I'll finish what I start. I'll finish the Dorian Heresy. Anyways, guys, this has been it for this video. You can consider this me branching out again, because from here I will be starting Age of Sigmar. Somebody needs to do properly Age of Sigmar lore coverage. I'm the Nameless Scholar, and like the Dark Angels would say, never forget, never forgive.